Good afternoon, this is Kyle Viola coming at you with another video. Today is just Bible study, and this is true Bible study in studying the person of Jesus Christ, his walk, who he is, how he dealt with religious people, religious leaders, experts of religion and of the law and of the scriptures and whatever, basically the know-it-alls. And so this is the same thing that we're dealing in this world today. Religiosity, religious people, mindsets that are not controlled, that are not influenced by the Holy Spirit, but influenced by man's opinions, traditions, religiosity, and essentially just part of the broken system of this world. So Jesus confronts everything and everyone. Wherever he walks, there's confrontation, actually. Jesus always stirs the pot. Jesus was a pot stirrer. Even though he showed love and mercy to those, he was very harsh with those who were religious. And even the scriptures say that God, essentially, the relationship with God that people have, he will come merciful to those who are merciful, but he comes harsh to those who are harsh. And this is exactly the character that the Old Testament described to the New Testament of Jesus Christ in his walk when he dealt with religious people. Here we go. Matthew 15, Then the Pharisees and religious scholars came from Jerusalem and approached Jesus with this question: Why do your disciples ignore the traditions of our elders? For example, they don't ceremonially wash their hands before they eat bread. Jesus answered, And why do you ignore the commandment of God because of your traditions? For didn't God say, Honor your father and mother, and whoever abuses or insults his father and mother must be put to death? But you teach that it's permissible to say to your parents when they are in financial need, or whatever gift you would have received from me, I can keep for myself since I dedicate it as an offering to God. People using God for their own advantage and selfish need. This doesn't honor your father and mother, and you have elevated your tradition above the words of God. Frauds and hypocrites. Isaiah described you perfectly when he said, These people honor me only with their words, for their hearts are so very distant from me. They pretend to worship me, but their worship is nothing more than the empty traditions of man. So that is one part. He actually continues. Then Jesus turned to the crowd and said, Come, listen, and open your heart to understand. What truly contaminates a person is not what he puts into his mouth, but what comes out of his mouth. That's what makes people defiled. So Jesus teaches it's not what goes into your mouth by bread, the natural, judgment that you think that this contaminates you. No, it's actually the words that come out of your mouth that contaminates your heart. Then his disciples approached him and said, Don't you know that what you just said offended the Pharisees? Jesus offended people left and right because he exposed their heart, because he spoke in truth. So I'm going to skip over to Luke 12. He says, here, let's see. All right, so he says in Luke 12, Jesus turned to his disciples and warned them, Make sure you are not influenced by the hypocrisy and phoniness of the religious leaders. It permeates everything they do and teach, for they are merely serving their own interests. Everything hidden and covered up will soon be exposed, for the facade is falling down, and nothing will be kept secret for long. Whatever you have spoken in private will be public knowledge, and what you have whispered secretly behind closed doors will be broadcast far and wide for all to hear. Isn't that what happens on the news? When stories come out, when things that were hidden come to light, it's exposed, darkness exposed. So actually, right earlier than that, he says in Luke 11, he says this, After Jesus finished saying this, a religious leader, one of the separated ones, asked him to come for a meal at his home. So when everyone had been seated at the table, the religious leader noticed that Jesus hadn't performed the cleansing ritual before he began eating. This is actually the same reference of what I talked about before. He was shocked. The Lord said, You Pharisees are religiously strict to your customs and obsessed with the peripheral issues. You're like one who will wipe clean only the outside of a cup or bowl, leaving the inside filthy. You are foolish to ignore the greed and wickedness within you. Shouldn't the one who cleans the outside also be concerned with cleaning the inside? If you free your heart of greed, showing compassion and true generosity to the poor, you have more than clean hands. You will be clean within. Do you see how Jesus exposed their hearts, and he spoke truth, and he offended the religious leaders of the time? Here's what Jesus says in John 8, verse 12. Then Jesus said, I am light to the world, and those who embrace me will experience life-giving light. You see, experiencing Jesus is actually life-giving light. You absolutely should be experiencing life when you encounter the real, genuine Jesus, the Son of God, the one who is connected and one with God the Father, and Jesus is God. He is actually our creator. And so he says this, and they will never walk in darkness. So connecting with Jesus causes you to experience the life-giving light and life of him. And if you are walking in the light, who is Jesus, Jesus clearly says that I am the light. Jesus is the light. If you experience and walk in the light, you will never walk in darkness. You should not walk in darkness. You should not be consumed by darkness if you're walking in the light. Who is the light? The light is a person. His name is Jesus. The Pharisees were immediately offended. Again, Jesus offends religious leaders. He says, and they say to him, you're just boasting about yourself. Since we only have your word on this, it makes your testimony invalid. That's an argument talked about with atheists all the time. Who is Jesus to call himself? But Jesus always called himself the Son of Man. But by the miracles, by the fruit of what he produced, it actually showed that he's the Son of God. And Peter was revealed that he was the Son of God. And Jesus said, God the Father revealed that to you. See, God the Father does the revealing. Jesus responded, just because I'm the one making these claims doesn't mean they're invalid, for I absolutely know who I am. Shouldn't we also walk in that confidence too, knowing who we are, children of the Most High God? Where I've come from and where I'm going. But you Pharisees have no idea about what I'm saying, for you've set yourselves up as judges of others based on outward appearances. Religious people, other people, whoever, they set themselves up as judges. But God the Father is the one true judge. Okay? And Jesus calls it out. You set yourself up as judge, judging based on outward appearance. This is what Jesus says. But I never judge others in that way, for I discern the truth. And I am not alone in my judgments, for my Father and I have the same understanding in all things, and he has sent me to you. Jesus was sent to those religious leaders by the Father to expose and confront them. Isn't it written in the law of Moses that the testimony of two men is trustworthy? Then what I say about who I am is true, for I am not alone in my testimony. My Father is the other witness, and we testify together of the truth. Then they asked, just who is this Father of yours? Where is he? Jesus answered, you wouldn't ask that question if you knew who I am, or my Father, for if you knew me, you would recognize my Father too. It's pretty amazing what Jesus confronts them with. Even later in John 8, he says this. This is interesting. Jesus said, then if God were really your Father, you would love me, for I've come from his presence. So that experience, Jesus came from the Father and confronted these religious leaders from the Father's presence. So if they discerned God's heart, if they were really seeking God, the Father, they would experience the Father's presence in Jesus. But they didn't, because their heart was callous. It says this, I didn't come here on my own. So Jesus clearly says, Jesus doesn't come here on his own. He was sent. He was sent by the Father from the throne room. But God sent me to you. Why don't you understand what I say? You don't understand because your hearts are closed to my message. You are the offspring of your father, the devil, and you serve your father very well, passionately carrying out his desires. He's been a murderer right from the start. He never stood with the truth, for he's full of nothing but lies. Lying is his native tongue. He is a master of deception and the father of lies. So clearly Jesus is exposing Satan and how he operates. Satan is the father of lies. He's a master of deception. And he's deceived religious leaders. Okay? Jesus says, but I am the true prince who speaks nothing but the truth. So if you want the pure truth, you go to the truth giver, the one who knows the truth, the one who is one with the Father of truth. Yet you refuse to believe me, and you want nothing to do with me. Can you name one sin that I've committed? Jesus was sinless. There was no sin that you can find in Jesus. Then if I'm telling you only the truth, why don't you believe me? If you really knew God, you would listen, receive, and respond with faith to his words. But since you don't listen and respond to what he says, it proves you don't belong to him, and you have no room for him in your hearts. So the religious leaders were always confronted with Jesus because Jesus was actually speaking on behalf of the Father in heaven. The religious leaders are supposed to represent God and true religion or true spirituality, but Jesus was the one walking in the Spirit. You see, Jesus actually exposed their hearts. He called out their corruption. He told them that if they truly were after the Father, that they would be clean on the inside, but they only judged things on the outside, judged things by appearance. And they had their own selfish desires, and it was all involved. So Jesus exposes corruption and darkness, and he actually does something to us, cleans us on the inside too. So that's that relationship and connection with Jesus, who is the light of the world. Jesus is the light of the world. Why is so many feeling like this world is so dark and grim? Because there's darkness covering the earth. But Jesus is the light of the world, and Jesus is a light that is greater than the darkness of this world. So to receive the light and to walk in the light, you have to actually receive Jesus. He is the one true light. And he's the only one who saves, the only one who gives us eternal life. So no matter what happens on this earth and in this time, you can always be assured that Jesus is the light of the world, and he loves you, and he wants to bless you, and all you have to do is come to him and rest in him and believe in him and have faith. So God bless you, and I will see you next time. Peace.